Hi, and thanks for joining us. I'm Stephanie with the Women's Empowerment Network, and joining me today is career coach for women, Tonya Montella. Hi, Tonya. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited. We're going to dive right in. Why don't actually you started off just by telling us about who you are, what you do.
Yeah. So, as you said, as a career coach for women, I support women throughout their entire career journey, whether they are trying to figure out what the heck they want to do in their jobs, to making sure that they set up their resume for the job that they want. They brush up their interview skills so that they're going into each interview with confidence and they're getting the job offer. Even to when they land the job, supporting them for their career development and ultimately career advancement. So, being more of a mentor throughout their career, navigating difficult situations, figuring out how to advocate for themselves for promotions and things like that. It runs the gamut.
That's great. And how did you get started doing this? What got you excited about wanting to help women with their careers?
Yeah, so I was finding that over the past several years, people were always sending someone my way for career advice. Hey, my cousin needs help with their resume. Can you take a look? Hey, I know somebody who's trying to change careers and she's just not certain if it's right for her. Can you talk to her? And so I started noticing that trend, and the more and more it started coming up, the more I noticed how fulfilled it was making me to have these conversations and to really help them turn on some light bulbs, to inspire them to achieve what it is that they were looking for achieving in their career. And then leaving them with a lot more motivation and more hope. A lot of people say that that's what they feel after they talk to me. They're like, oh, I was so confused and really down on myself. I really was unsure. And now I think, yeah, I think I can do this. I think I know what I'm going to do. And that was just the light bulb moment for me. I was like, I need to lean into this officially, like actually, create my LLC and do the website, all the things to get my business up and running more officially.
That's great. So,
Mhm.
what does a session with you look like? What kinds of things do you talk about when you first meet with a client?
Yeah, great question. So, particularly, I've been working a lot with job seekers. So, it's women who are looking to change careers. So, again, it's doing an exercise. It's a lot of exercise based conversations. So, I'm giving them the exercise beforehand, giving them time and space to do it in their own world. And then we reconvene for our call to dive deeper. So, they tell me what they came up with. I ask them more questions, just to make sure I fully understand and make sure that they've really thought it through and it's really aligned with what they're looking for. But yeah, we go everywhere from figuring out what job they want to step into to working with them to write the resume. I don't write resumes for people. That's not the way you learn, right? Because then you're going to
Mm.
need somebody like me the next time you want to do it, right? So I teach them how to write the resume for the job that they want. And then when we get into the interview preparation, we're doing mock interviews. So I'm asking them questions like I would ask any person who I've hired. I've hired a number of people. um, and they're answering on the fly. They're not knowing what I'm going to ask them. And so when they do, I give them feedback real time. And then we work on things. If they still don't really feel comfortable answering certain questions, we work on it until they do.
I love that. I love that you're doing like real life, practice, that it's not just an intellectual exercise.
Yeah.
Um, so I certainly don't want you to, give things away necessarily. But can you give us an idea of like what kind of, you mentioned exercises, like a specific, just, ballpark idea of what that might look like? What kind of questions are in those exercises?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my favorite ones is the figuring out what they want to do. I call the exercise Discover Your Power because it's a myriad of identifying what things you really love doing, whether that be at your work and previous jobs that you've held, or, um, you know, extracurricular things like maybe you've done some volunteering. And as you start to really hone in on the things that you really have loved doing so far, you start to see some themes show up like, oh, it's really about like helping people, or it's really about like doing physical activity, whatever it is, right? And then we look through what are some of your strengths? Like, what are you just really, really good at? Because I want to make sure that women are stepping into roles that fulfill them, but also allow them to thrive. Like, you want it to be something that you enjoy, but you also want to be really, really good at it so that you do better and it's just a cycle. When you do better, you feel better and you want to do more. And as you continue to do more and perform your best, you climb the ladder, so to speak. So yeah, we go through what they love, what their strengths are, and then I talk to them about their why. I want to make sure that they are honed in on why they love to do those things. Um,
Mm,
so that it's not just surface level, like, oh, it seems like a cool thing to do or makes a lot of money, right? It needs to be a little more meaningful than that. So we talk through all those things.
that's great. So, when it comes to women and empowerment, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to you to be able to empower women, and, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I almost think of it as like unlocking a door. That door being like our own mindset, our own um, limiting beliefs, everything that's holding us back from doing the thing that we truly in our core want to do. And so I feel like when you empower somebody, you show them what could be on the other side of the door if they just were able to get rid of the door and
Mhm.
go to the other side of it. That's the best analogy I could think of in this moment.
I love that. No, that's great. That's perfect. And then and I like how it's almost a very empowering way of doing it because you're not doing it for them, you know. You're showing them that it's able to be done if they are willing to do the work.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when it comes to success, what does that look like for you? For you personally, what does success look like?
That's a great question. It's something I've contemplated myself, um, recently, actually. I feel like for me, whenever I say success, because I always talk about like, oh, I've been able to establish a successful career for myself, and I've always had success, things like that. And I thought, what do I really mean by that? So for me, success is achieving the thing that you want. And I know that that's a very broad statement, but it's like, okay, I want to achieve this job. Okay, well, you do the work to land the job and then you get it. Check the box, success. I want to be a mom one day. And, ultimately you get to that point and great, success, right? So for me, it's just truly getting whatever it is that you want to achieve, whether that means it's monetary or not. That would be
Mhm.
the success for me.
And what does your career trajectory look like? Where did you kinda start off and compared to where you are now?
Yeah, so I started off in marketing, and I always share how many career transitions I've made. That's why I love talking about career change with women and helping them to identify the role that they want to step into next because I've done it a number of times myself. So I feel like I kind of have it figured out at this point. But I started in marketing, just doing marketing for a company in Virginia at the time, and then I moved into specifically the aspect of marketing was digital advertising. So I was running digital ad campaigns for other companies who were my clients. And then I moved into teaching other businesses how to run their own digital advertising campaigns. So it was more of like a self-service situation where I was teaching them how to do it, telling them how to look at data to make sure that they were getting the ROI they wanted. Uh, and doing that. And then from there, I went into learning and development because I realized the thing that I liked the most was teaching people and seeing them get it. And I always say, need me less, right? Because
Mm.
compare it to how I said about the resume, right? Like, if I can teach you how to do it, you can do this inevitably, right? You won't always need help when you need.
Mhm.
I went to learning development, and then from there, I went into sales enablement. So the trajectory was really always about leaning into the things that I love doing. So like I said, "Oh, I love to train people," and well, in learning and development in that particular role I had, it was too many people I was trying to train, so I thought sales enablement is more narrowed down, it's sales.
Mhm.
Um, and now in doing career coaching, it's even more narrowed down because I'm working with, women specifically, on an individual basis, but I'm looking to do more group programs.
Mhm. Now, when it comes to is it primarily job seekers you said you're working with? Are there other women that you're working with that are looking to transition within roles in the same company, or is it everyone that's looking for, like, an exit strategy and they want a whole new thing in a whole new company?
Yeah, it's mostly, people who want a whole new thing, and a whole new company. Um, but, I have worked with a wo or I'm starting to work with a woman who, is just looking for career advancement at the place she's at. So, yes, she's looking at another department, but she likes the place that she works at. She's just trying to really find her way and figure out, how she can do more and achieve more at the place that she's working.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And what do you think it is, that compels women to look for a change? Do you believe is it sometimes an internal event or dissatisfaction with where they're at or a combination of the 2?
Yes, great question. And in this moment, I'm reflecting back on my own trajectory that I just shared. Um, I'll speak to the women that I've been working with. For them, it's usually a number of things. It's usually burnout. It's usually just they get to the point where they just don't want to be there anymore. They don't want to do the thing anymore. It's almost like it bubbles up to a point where you're like, "I gotta do something or I'm gonna lose my mind."
Mhm.
That's typically it. But when I think about my own career, sometimes it was, just because, the business was changing or layoffs, right? Like, using that as an opportunity to reevaluate what it is that I really wanted to do. So at times it was by force, but
Mhm.
um, but other times it's by choice.
And what's your take on, we hear a lot about the toxic corporate culture. And
Mm,
I think that, over, the last, I don't know, several years, there's been kind of a shift away from that to,
mhm.
maybe a different type of environment and that, toxicity is frowned upon and that hustle culture. What's been your experience with that, with the women that you've talked to?
Yeah, I would agree with what you just said, that there's been a shift over the past several years. Broadly, I mean, again, if I think about, getting to the point where you're like, "I need to make a change or I'm gonna lose my mind," which is typically the time when women are reaching out to me. They're like, "Listen, I need someone's help. I can't figure this out. I need an outsider's perspective to help me figure this stuff." So usually in that case, it is still a toxic environment, but not in the way that it used to be, right? Like, to your point, um, you know, somebody with a bad attitude, somebody that always tells people off, somebody that's just completely rude, like that no longer is acceptable, I find. So it's not toxic because of behavior like that. It's toxic because they're just being overworked, they're being undervalued. And it also, I have to address, because this is true for me too, the self-ownership in it, right? Like, when you're not advocating for yourself because you need more help and you're overworked, you're not asking for the help, it can just make the problem worse. Or if you feel like you're undervalued, you're not getting the promotion or the raise or whatever it is, maybe you're not asking for those things or letting people know that that's what you're ready for or looking for. So, it's a number of things. I just think the I wouldn't phrase it as toxic, but I think the stresses, I would call it, that people are
Mm,
experiencing in the environment these days are due to different things.
interesting. So is there something that you could share quickly? Let's say if you're in a position now that, you're generally happy, basically happy, but there are things here and there that are starting to boil over, and you can sort of see that it's maybe headed in a direction that's not gonna go well. What do
Mhm.
you recommend for people to do in that case? Should they talk to their supervisor? Should they go to human resources?
Yeah, great question. It's very, specific to the issue or to, it's very situational, I would say. So, in general, yeah, I always suggest talking to your manager, making it known that you're observing these things or feeling these ways. If you feel like you're not getting the support of your manager, going to HR and letting them know what's going on. Um, I also know some people at some companies feel like HR doesn't do much for them either. So you have to figure out like where you are able to get the support that you're looking for. The other thing I would always also suggest is just looking within, which I know is like frou frou, right? But honestly, to evaluate what's happening and how you're feeling about it and what you can do to change it. Because usually there is something you can do to change it, whether it's removing yourself or letting people know that this is what's happening, and being vocal about it, or moving to a different place within the company or switching roles, whatever it is, there's usually something you can do to alleviate what's going on. So I would look in those three areas: manager, HR, self.
Self. And I love that. I think the self part is really important. I know, we talked before the call about that, the idea of, the victim mentality and sort of, staying stuck.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot where there's an unwillingness to sort of look at, it's maybe not your fault, but the responsibility lies with you to be able to make some sort of a shift or a change that, if you're asking us, your supervisor or human resources to make the change, it's like, here's, I feel like it gives you a little more ammo to say, here's what I've done. I've done X, Y, and Z, and that's what I'm capable of doing. And then you guys need to take it the rest of the way. I think that's great.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I talk so much about taking ownership of your career and not taking a passive role or a back seat and just waiting for or hoping for things to
Mhm.
happen or get better. Because again, as I reflect on my own path, I can recognize the moments in which I also felt like I was being overworked or undervalued, but I also recognize in those moments I wasn't vocal about it. I didn't let people know that I was ready or wanted more. I didn't raise my voice enough when I should have. So there's that ownership in things as well. But yeah, it's so true what you just said.
Now, do you believe, that this is sort of a systemic problem as women that we, are conditioned to just, absorb and and adjust and
Mhm.
not be proactive? What are your thoughts on
You know
that?
what? Yeah, I do. I do think that there are centuries of of this being ingrained in us one way or another. Um, I mean, I can think of so many so many instances that would lead us to having that sort of behavior by nature or that mentality by nature. So I do think that it's kind of, natural within us. And that's why I think it's important to be so aware of it when it's happening, to catch it in the moment. And in any chance you can, pivot that and make sure that you are doing something to take control or to try and take the next step or speak up about the thing. Again, just to have that sense of empowerment that you can make a change. Things don't have to be the way that they are, or you don't have to be stuck in that job that you hate, or you don't have to feel like you're not valued as much as you know that you are. There's always, like I said, something that you can do to change your environment.
Mhm, mhm. And, I think that, that victim getting back to that, that kind of the woe is me is just such a, a dangerous trap. Um, and I think that, as women that we, tend to sort of identify the problem and say, "Oh, it's the patriarchy," right? Like, that's sort of this, like, knee-jerk reaction, and then but then that's it. That's what we say. We
Yeah,
identify it as, "That's the problem, and this is whose fault it is," and then we sort of think that by doing that, it sort of absolves us of any other responsibility that we have to change the situation. Is that something that you see?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I see women when we talk about feeling stuck. I see that a lot, and when it comes to the victim mentality, I see it show up as just not being able to see the things that they can do to change it, right? So that's where, like, that outside perspective comes into play. That's where the conversations that I have and give it kind of letting them see the other side of the door, come into play, to let them know, like, "No, this door is not locked. Like, this is your life. This is your career. Like, you are in the driver's seat." You just have to take a moment to pause. I think we don't do that enough, women
Mm,
and men included. Take a moment to pause and just really reflect and take a step back to figure out what's going on. I think that oftentimes uncovers what you can do to change the situation when you just take a moment to look at the full picture or get that outsider's perspective, to look within your situation. Because sometimes when you're too close to things, right, you can't see, you can't zoom
Mhm.
out. So yeah, it's really important.
Now, do you get pushback from clients that maybe look at you, someone who's successful, and say, "Oh, easy for you to say or easy for you to do because, you seemingly have it all together." Is that something that you encounter, and how do you address that?
Mm. You know, I haven't heard that yet. I'm sure it will come. Um, but I mean, the way that I would address it would be, and this is actually something I'm trying to be more transparent about, is my journey. I mean, because everything from, I guess the easiest one is like navigating different career changes and like having that sense of being so unsure of yourself as to whether or not the thing that you think you want to do is right. That's kind of the surface level one. Like, okay, yeah, that's challenging, but truly, what have you been through, Tanya? You know what I mean? Like, and we could talk about a number of things like gender bias, racial bias, ageism. And 'cause I have to joke, like, I mean, it's not a joke, it's true. Like, I look a lot younger than I am. So having to establish myself in the workplace as somebody who is to be respected in the work that I do, like that's something I've had to figure out. Um, and then just, I mean, one thing that I observed was like moments where I didn't establish or respect my own boundaries, particularly in the workplace, like where it would have been beneficial for me. So you take, for example, being on maternity leave and like, I'm being asked to still do work even though I'm on leave. And it's like, well, mm, okay, I'll do it.
Mhm.
And I did it. And there were just so many different instances where I think I would have been further in my career had I not done certain things. I would have been more at peace in certain tough situations. Um, yeah, I could go on.
Yeah. And I know that you've mentioned, navigating, issues at work, and I know personally you've had to navigate some pretty very big, heavy issues as well.
Yeah.
Do you wanna share a little bit about with the listeners about what that was?
Yeah. So on Christmas of 2015, my husband and I, our first son was stillborn. And when I think about like, all the different ways that that impacted me, my personal life, but also my professional life, it was interesting because, when I think about my boundaries, right? Luckily the company that I worked for at the time still gave me the leave, even though I didn't come home with a baby.
Mhm.
So I was very appreciative of that. But even after the time had passed and it was time for me to go back to work, I wasn't ready. I mean, who knows how long it would have taken me to truly be ready, but I wasn't ready to face the people who had seen me pregnant, who I knew were then going to ask, "Hey, how's the baby?" Or, "Hey, how's everything? Do you have a picture?" Things like that. I wasn't ready to address it. Every time it came up, I like stumbled over how I was responding to them. Like that was really tough for me. And then what came up was I was asked to go to a client visit. So I had to travel and meet this client. And I said, I'm really nervous about this because the last time I saw this client, I was pregnant. And this is going to come up. They're going to ask me about it. And I was met with, oh, it'll be fine. You'll be fine. And again, instead
Mhm.
of respecting and establishing my own boundaries and saying, I actually won't be fine. I'm not ready. I'm struggling with the conversations here, never mind in a professional setting where I have to be polished in front of a client. So I went and they asked, and just all these different things that were just really difficult to navigate personally, yes, but then professionally too.
Yeah, I think that's, for women, it's obviously a very different, I think, situation than with men, and there's a sort of, speaking of boundaries,
Mhm.
that there's a sort of intrusiveness that's just natural when especially around pregnancy, people even just, touching your belly, I see that all the time, like women, people just thinking it's okay to do that,
Yeah.
and I think women, not having had children children of my own. I don't really know what that's like, to move through a career, work, whatever, being pregnant. But it seems as if all of a sudden boundaries are just dissolved. Like there aren't. It's like just this free for all conversation about you and your size or your belly, and I'm going to touch it, and
Yeah.
personal questions and unsolicited advice.
Mm.
Is it something you want to talk about, how managing that in a workplace as a woman? I'm sure you've.
Oh, God. Yes. Yeah. Everything you're saying. And it's funny, you're like, I'm never having children of my own, but everything you said is so spot on. And it is exactly what I was met with in the workplace. I carried for our first son and now our second son, very large. So my belly was just enormous. So the comments around, oh, you're just having one, or, "Oh, you're not due till, months out," when seemingly I was ready to pop at any moment. I was like, "No, still 3 months left. I know I'm huge. Say it." To your point around unsolicited advice, I shared a pod, I guess you could call it, of desks with 2 men at the time. Great.
Mm.
So literally every day I came into the office, this one guy in particular would tell me how much I had dropped, which is like the indication that you're ready to go, right? Like, "Oh, your belly's dropped." Every day, and I'm thinking to myself, "Has it dropped more than the day before? Like, how much can my belly's on the floor at this point, like,
Mhm, mhm.
saying, "Why are you saying this to me? Like, leave me alone." At that point, I didn't wanna speak in the morning, but that's the other thing, like, you have to be on. You have to when you enter the office, like, people are ready to chat, people have had their coffee, and people wanna do this and ask you for that, and I just didn't wanna be there, like, getting ready and trying to tie my shoes and drive and reach this like, I didn't want to be there, period, never mind have to address all these comments and questions and unsolicited advice, like you said, it was a lot.
One of our listeners here, Jessica, asked, "Where did basic humanity and decency go?" I don't know. I don't I don't know.
I don't know.
But
Yeah.
these are things that, are uniquely, the experience of women. Like, men do not have to deal with this stuff at work, and I think that probably that's a big part of why, men are able to move easily or more easily through the workplace and get more promotions, and because there's a focus. There's no focus on the rest of their lives, the rest of their personal lives. It's, there's
Mm,
just a blip, the wife, the kids, the extra, those are kind of just blips. And with women, just becomes, I think, this like the forefront
mm,
of, you know, whether or not you're pregnant, but your home life and your children. And as opposed to, there's seems to be very little separation of like you as the professional person and you as a private person. There's this, it's just been allowed, right? That those lines can be blurred, and
mhm,
it must be hard to sort of, then try to, you're trying to move through the space at your business of a professional and someone who is to be respected. And
mm,
it's like, how's diaper duty? And I don't, I mean, it's questions,
yeah,
I guess, that, probably just men aren't not having to navigate, Yeah, just
yeah,
because the standards are, they're just, they're just so different. And it
yeah,
creates, I think, probably a harder experience for women.
mhm. Yeah, and back to the loss that we had with our first son, but then even with when I was pregnant with our second son, what was challenging for me to address was when people would ask, "Oh, is this your first?" And
Oh
I'm
god,
thinking
yeah.
like, "Technically, no. Do I
Mhm.
still go and open up, like, what do you so how old's your" uh, like,
Mhm.
and then you just have to figure out, like, how am I going to respond to these questions that are inevitably gonna come up because there are no boundaries when you're pregnant, it seems, and then how do you address it when there's a lot more behind the scenes that people just don't know and you're not ready to discuss, nor are you at any obligation to discuss with people, right?
Right, right.
Mhm.
So, what do you think? I think about this a lot. I think that when we have big things that happen, difficult things that happen,
Mhm,
we're trying to overcome something. There's something larger than us that drives us,
mhm,
and I like to play with the term, like the idea of audacity, where you're just gonna be audacious about this, pursuing this or, leaving something that's tragic behind and moving towards a different
mm,
goal. But there has to be some kind of an emotional, s you know, spark within you,
mhm,
right? That's gonna, like, compel you and kind of shake you and make you move towards that.
yeah.
Do you know what that is for you? Do you know what brought you to that you were able to move through and continue to go after something that happened that would bring most people that would just be like, "That's it. That's
Mhm.
it. I'm done. I'm not gonna try anything ever again."
Yeah. Well, I think 2 things help me to get through and to push forward. One is I just naturally, I suppose, don't have the victim mentality. If something bad has happened to me, I am very adamant about not allowing that to consume me. So in the like, after our loss of our first son, it was consuming me naturally. So I had to make the decision to do something about it. I think that's the biggest thing is, like, something is going to consume you, right? We're emotional beings, we're humans. When you have a great loss in your life, that's, of course, going to impact you, whether you try to fight it or not. So that's what was happening to me. It was consuming me, of course. But like I said, I had to make the decision to not stay in that place and to do something about it. So what I did, in case people are curious who are listening, what I did was I started to be a resource for other women who had experienced child loss that was similar to ours. So it was kind of shifting that energy of, like, instead of it consuming me and what happened, to us, I was pivoting my focus to those women and being a resource for them. And it, of course, helped them, but it helped me to get through the grieving process as
Mm,
kind of like a twofold thing. But it really started with making the decision to step out of that place that I was going in.
that's incredible. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's amazing, and I hear that a lot of that idea of being that resource for other people as a vehicle for healing yourself, and that's great that you were able to do that.
Yeah.
Now, how do you feel that or do you feel like your experience that what parts of that are you able to bring in to your coaching with your clients? Is there, an increased sense of empathy or, what do you think that did for you and a positive thing?
Mm, really great question. I do think the sense of empathy is one. Um, I think when I talk about navigating difficult conversations with my clients, when it's more around the career development, career advancement scenario, less of like the job seekers, um, that comes into play a lot because of the different types of difficult situations I've had to navigate. Like I said, all the different types of biases, right? So that added another layer, like, okay, being a pregnant woman in the workplace, and never mind that, but experiencing loss and then returning to the workplace and being asked to travel and be in front of people who had previously seen me pregnant, all those things. So that added another layer. So if there's a woman who is going through that, I can certainly help her to navigate that. But also too, I think truly the biggest one I would say is that component of taking ownership of your career, also your life. I mean, there's a lot of parallels between like your personal life and your professional life, but taking ownership and making the decision to take action on something and not allow something to consume you or not allow any negativity to continue. So that was the big thing for me that I think is how it's translated into the work I do today.
And I love that idea of not allow. I
Mhm.
think so often it's sort of this, but this is what's happening,
Yeah.
and that acceptance as opposed to pushing back.
Yeah, it will happen if you let it, but it can
Absolutely.
change. It can also change if you allow that to happen as well.
Mhm.
Mhm,
So we're gonna wrap it up, but I just have one more question. If you could go back in time and meet your younger self, whether
mhm.
this is personal, professional, whatever it might be, what's one piece of advice that you might want to give to younger Tanya?
Mm. I would I don't know that this is necessarily advice. I think it's more affirmation, which is something
Mhm.
that I really could have used. Just for a little bit of context, I was not this empowered, human being before. I was not confident, advocating for myself, like none of that. I was so shy, so insecure, um, all those things. I was the complete opposite, honestly, of the way that I am today. So, what I would tell her is I would actually let her know that she is worthy, she is
Mm.
enough, um, and that she's valuable. I think a lot of me trying to achieve so much in my career and be such a top performer and, climb the ladder and get raises and promotions and things like that, me always striving to achieve has been to try and prove either to other people or to myself that I was worth something. So that's what I would have told her, to let her know, like, you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. Like, relax. You are great just the way you are.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, and I think we all that's probably something all of us could say, is
Yeah.
that you're enough. You're enough. You don't need to be more or achieve more to be worthy of love and, the good things in life.
Yeah. I think I can see instances where I'm going to need to replay this back to myself and tell it to my present day self as well.
Well, this has been great, Tonya. Thank you so much for sharing with us. For anyone that wants to work with Tonya, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Ooh, great question. I would say just go to my website. They can contact me through my website, schedule a free call, or they can just consume a number of things I have on there, whether it be my podcast, which you were a wonderful guest on. I have some free downloadable guides on there. So start with the website that's got everything, and it's TonyaEmpowers.com.
That's great. Thank you. And I'm also going to include the link there below this call. So for any of you that want to reach out, that's how you can do it. Thank you so much again, Tonya. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.